lobby. Let's all go to the lobby, lobby. Let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat.
Hello, horror hounds, and welcome to Now Slaying, an It's Lay's podcast production where we break down the latest and greatest in the world of horror. I'm your not-so-humble host, Colton.
I'm Rowan.
And today on the show, we're going to be discussing Wolfman, which was released January 17th, 2025, exclusively in theaters. Rowan, soon we're going to get into the full discussion, but first, I want to know, were you looking forward to Wolfman?
I was quite interested in this. Obviously, a Blumhouse release, so I'm always interested to see what's going on, but, another Universal offering from, Universal Monster offering, I shall say, from Leigh Whannell. Now, I've said many times on the show, I have not seen Invisible Man. I still have not seen Invisible Man, but I know people really like that one. And so I was just kind of interested because obviously, ever since the 30s or 40s or whatever, when the, original stuff came out, not many people have really been able to successfully pull off Universal monsters. You get your odd one, you get like Coppola's Dracula and stuff like this, but most of the time this is really relegated to like very, very B type movies are just terribly done. So I'm always interested to see like a new iteration of this. And, Leigh Whannell always piques my interest. Although I'm looking at it, I've now seen two movies he's directed, this and Insidious 3. I never saw Upgrade.
Oh my God, dude. I think you would love Upgrade.
Everyone that sees it tells me like this is your kind of movie, and I think I might even own it. I think that's like a 4.5, maybe even 5-star movie for me. Like Upgrade's excellent. Yeah, I'll have to watch it. But I'm always interested. Obviously Saw, is very, whether I'm a big Saw guy or not, it was very formative in for my age, and I think Leigh Whannell is a fantastic horror writer in general. I think his writing is pretty good. So yeah, saying all that, I was pretty excited to kick the year off, see how I feel this year's gonna be. Judging it solely on Wolfman. So if I like this or not, of course, that's how the rest of the year goes. What about you, Colton? Were you looking forward to this? Yeah, it's a little bit weird to be discussing it this soon because we just covered this, or at least I feel like we just covered it on our Now Slaying, the look ahead, the year ahead. So yeah, I guess I'll just repeat what I said there, where I don't think the trailers for this really look the best. It's also releasing in January, which is, obviously the dumping zone of the year. Sometimes you get Fantasy Island, sometimes you get Megan, sometimes you get, I think, The Invisible Man. I think it was a February release there a few years ago. Not quite January, but still the beginning of the year. So yeah, I had a couple of detractors going in, and then also there was like this kind of online discussion of how terrible the Wolfman looked in this movie. I think it got revealed at like Universal Horror Nights, and then I think Blumhouse felt the need to kind of put out actual footage of the Wolfman, very much showing the monster before the movie's even in theaters. So I never happened to see it. But
there was
just either. So
yeah, there was just a groundswell, I feel like, of kind of hate for this character design before I even got to see the movie. With that said, Christopher Abbott, the lead, or I guess co-lead with Julia Garner in this movie, he knows how to pick good projects most of the time, and he's done a lot of good indie fare within probably the last decade. And then Julia Garner is pretty much great in everything I've seen her in. The subject matter, or the movies that she's in, I don't always love, but I think her performance oftentimes is like, one of the strongest aspects of them. Plus Upgrade, as I mentioned, is a great movie. The Invisible Man was very good as well. And I think that was the last movie I saw before getting like locked down during COVID. Nice. So it was the sort of thing where I was like, well, at least I, braved COVID, the COVID winters here in Newfoundland to go see The Invisible Man. It was actually a good movie. So yeah, with the pedigree involved, I was rooting for this one and I was excited to check it out. So did Leigh Whannell bite off more than he could chew with this new Wolfman adaptation? Well, before we get into that, let's roll the trailer.
Daddy, are we gonna die?
No. It's my job to protect you.
Are you okay? We gotta get out of here!
What's wrong with Daddy?
He's infected.
Blake, you're scaring me.
Back up!
Rated R.
Only in theaters January 17th.
Wolfman was directed by Leigh Whannell and written by Leigh Whannell and Corbett Tuck, and the story is as follows. After surviving a moonlit encounter with an unseen animal in the forest, a family barricades themselves in a remote farmhouse to wait until daybreak. But as the night wanes on, the father begins to transform into something entirely unrecognizable. Now, here on Now Slaying, we like to keep things relatively spoiler-free up front before getting into the more in-depth spoiler-filled discussion. Rowan, we usually started off with your spoiler-free thoughts, but, just a peek behind the curtain, Rowan has been complaining in the group chat about possibly the worst theater-going experience of his life. So I think for 2 episodes in a row, I think Nosferatu, we started just kind of ranting about theater audiences. How about we kick 2025 off with another theater rant?
So I come with a theater rant, but I also come with a solution. I think it's time. Oh, no. I think it's time to make theaters great again. I think we need to make it exclusive. I think there needs to be like a higher price at entry. It needs to be like you have to take a test. You have to like get a club membership, like a golf club.
Oh, wow, okay.
You might maybe get a jacket or something, but that's the only way you can get into the theater. So I went and saw this. I had to travel an hour. This was only playing tonight in IMAX, so one theater.
An hour each way.
Yes,
right?
Each way.
Yes.
So it was only playing in one IMAX theater in Nova Scotia this evening. And so I went, not a lot of people, I will say, like probably 8. Like maybe that's a high number. Mm-hmm. So I'm sitting down, I got my seats. I got my stuff, my drinks, all that goodies and stuff. I'm all right. So, then 2 guys sat behind me, and I noticed, I don't know if it's the same in the States, anyone listening from the States, but in Canada, like, there's a lot of, like, car commercials and bank commercials. Like, there's stuff that, like, no one's paying attention to. So these guys are, like, yapping away, and, I don't really care at that point. Even the trailers, I'm like, some people care about trailers, some people don't. I'll tolerate that. But no, these guys... let me just get my phone out here. This movie was 103 minutes long. These guys talked for about 90 minutes of this film because they came in late to the film. And they came in during the trailers, then left, and then came in late. And these guys talked the entire movie. And not only did they talk the entire movie, they took 4 to 5 phone calls in the theater, and then proceeded to full volume talk through it. And it wasn't just any phone calls, it was like FaceTime phone calls or like Skype or something. So so not only am I listening to them, they have it on speaker. Like it's not in their ear. They have it on speaker. So I'm also listening.
This is like, I would be cursing at them. I would be screaming at them for sure.
It was definitely interesting. And it was just like, then the phone calls would go away, but then they would just talk to each other in full volume voice. I don't know what they were talking about. It was not English.
Gotcha.
And it was just like, it was absolutely horrid. I think it might be hands down one of the worst theater experiences yet. I just don't get it. Did you catch a
glimpse of them? Like, were they a lot younger than you?
They were like our age, maybe like late 20s or something.
Yeah, because I always wonder if it's just like a cultural thing where maybe like in other areas of the world, like, the theater experience isn't very respected or it doesn't really matter. Or I was wondering if it's, this groundswell of younger people just very much not caring about the movies, where they, they'd rather be watching TikTok, but for some reason they're sat in the theater.
So my theory is both of those things. I just think I did say that. I said, maybe not everywhere appreciates the theater experience. Yeah. And I just didn't get it though. I was like, because it's IMAX, so I'm like, they paid extra money to go see this movie. It's not a cheap night or anything. And then I was like, they came to literally talk through the whole movie and just take phone calls.
You should have asked them what they thought of the movie.
I should have.
Got the review.
So that, as I said at the beginning, I think we implement like golf club, country club system, and then that's how we weed people out.
Well, I don't know about you, but I'm actually part of the Cineplex Club.
So am I.
You know?
Yes.
Okay, yeah. If you go to more than one movie a month, I think it pays for itself. So maybe two. But yeah, for me, I was also seeing this in IMAX. It was playing in 2 screens here, and I just chose whatever, louder, larger screen, good enough. There was probably about a dozen people there, but I had a very respectful, completely engaged audience. I actually had a note that said our 2025 horror audience is turning over a new leaf. Well, maybe here in Newfoundland, not so much Nova Scotia. Yeah. It was actually funny because there was a couple of moments in the movie that like the couple behind me, like they audibly gasped.
Yes.
Like they were surprised. They were like, oh my God, there's a Wolfman in this Wolfman movie, and I was like, well, maybe they were supposed to walk into like Sonic 3, which was right next door or something, and they didn't know what was going on, but they were clearly shocked by this movie.
There was a young woman sitting in front of me. I was like in the middle. She was in a row ahead of me, and I will say I could tell she had a time. She was like covering her eyes. She was like gasping. She was scared.
Wow.
She was just. I've never seen anyone emote that much in a movie. So, you know what? I was proud. I was like, I like to see people have a good time at the movies.
Yeah, for me, when I go to the theater, I'm like a big nerd, and now we're getting into minutia of how we choose our seats and whatnot. But I pull up the seating charts and whatnot, and when I sit down in the theater, I always just make sure that nobody's sat next to me or like behind me or anything. So I'll always pull up the seating chart and be like, okay, well, if someone bought a late ticket and they're next to me and it's not sold out, I'll just move over an extra couple of seats. I try and mitigate any disruptions during my screening, because I am someone who like I feel like I'm a little bit over the top in terms of like being annoyed by things. Like honestly, I used to notice every now and then people's Apple Watches with the screen glinting on it. So I have an Apple Watch myself, but like I literally will take it off if I notice that it's doing that. So I'm very much over the top when it comes to movies. Movies are like religious experience for me. They're important. The theaters, I want to preserve that experience.
I also do the same thing with the seating chart, but unfortunately these guys must have bought their tickets like late because they like the movie.
You already sat down and
So, and then
fair enough.
Yeah, and then it's just I was too lazy. I should have just got up and like walked to the other side of the theater.
Walked right up to the front row. Like it's IMAX, so you probably could have sat like I don't know in row C or something, and it probably would have been fine.
Yeah, next time. It's all right.
Rowan, your spoiler-free thoughts. We've been rambling about theater etiquette.
Yeah, I mean, so I have like my first spoiler-free thought is also another suggestion for people going to see this movie is maybe go on Amazon, Google night vision goggles. This might be the darkest movie I've seen in a long time. Don't give it a good O. I don't know if that's a good thing. It's just dark.
No, that was like a confused though. I never noticed how dark it was when I was watching it. So now I'm wondering if it was a bulb thing or a projection air,
I thought it was quite dark. Overall, I have a really weird feeling with this movie where, we're so used to coming in to these years in January and getting like Night Swim, all this kind of stuff. And like, this isn't Night Swim, but this isn't some upper echelon of,
there we go.
Of film. And it's just, I could see what Leigh Whannell wanted to do. I could see the themes he was working with. You can tell, obviously, it's 2025. They're like, Wolfman's been done. It's been done. Let's try to do something a little different. And I just felt like nothing really landed. I also felt like, I got kind of worried because I never looked at how long the movie was or anything. And I was just kind of like, when's the movie gonna like start? And then I'm like thinking, I think I've been in the movie for like an hour. And like I said, it was just a really weird experience that even in the height of the horror and the action going on, I'm like, I still never really felt like the movie got going. I'm just kind of like thrown into it. And I think that could be, I don't think the character development was done very well. These are unfortunately, like you said, there's some actual acting power in this. The chemistry, 0% of this family. The special effects and stuff I thought were pretty terrible. Basically everything about this, I was like, oh, this is why this came out in January. To me, I'm very surprised with how, like I said, I've never seen Invisible Man, but I know how much people loved it and said it was successful. I was like, there's no way that anybody's overly going to like this movie. It doesn't seem successful in anything it tried to pull off. And I would argue that this is barely a werewolf movie. This is not a Wolfman movie. It's not a werewolf movie. I was just really confused. I thought that the creature designs were terrible. And I think yet again, and should I be surprised? No, I should not. Just the actual horror was just not good. Like I said, you said someone was gasping. My theater, people were reacting, and I'm just a hollow shell out here because I was just like, I don't get it. Also, this movie somehow turns into Morbius, or we got some superhero shit looking stuff in this, which we'll get into, I'm sure, later.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was just to me, I was this really missed the mark, unfortunately, in most categories. What are your spoiler-free thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I think overall it's pretty mishandled. I think kind of most glaringly is based on Whannell's adaptation of The Invisible Man and how subversive and unexpected it was in many ways. I thought this was going to be a similar reinvention of the Wolfman. And what we got was decidedly not that, and to me, frustratingly so. This was very straightforward. The longer this went on, my interest waned, and I just found myself wishing that Whannell took a more subtle, symbolic, or kind of metaphorical approach to the first half at least, or even 2/3 of the movie. Oftentimes when I was watching this, I just found my mind wandering and thinking about what the movie could have been with a little bit more restraint or a little bit more of a clear vision. It's the sort of thing where they want to explore generational trauma in this movie, and it has greater ambitions of just becoming kind of a creature feature or a story of transformation. And basically the movie sidelines it whenever things even remotely get interesting whatsoever. I have a couple of notes that, I'll discuss in the spoiler-filled section. But honestly, there was a lot of this that I was just very confused about as well, because I kind of liked Christopher Abbott's chemistry with his daughter in the beginning. But then there's a moment very quickly into that where it's a high-stress moment, kind of like a scolding moment, and his daughter visibly starts to cry, and then it cuts to him, and he softens based on it, and then he cuts back to the daughter, and the daughter's fine, and then he's angry, and is just oh, this is a hatchet job, almost, in the editing, where it's the emotion between the cuts aren't matching. She's no longer crying. She seems completely placid, completely stone-faced and fine. It's very different than what we saw 10 seconds before. There's a lot of little weird issues in this that I was just not expecting. And then that's also Julia Garner. I mentioned I'm a fan of her most of the time when I see her in things, but she just doesn't really do anything in this movie.
In fairness, she's not really given anything to do in this movie.
Her character is very underwritten, and it's basically this character that is just reactionary and oftentimes just goes along with the flow of the film rather than being this well-realized character behaving how, one of these people we'd expect. And she's also this privileged, outspoken, upper-class Manhattan type that's is not my favorite sort of character to follow anyways. There's a couple, once again, key moments where I was okay, they're tugging at something more interesting. Let's explore this. The movie never does. The cinematography in Leigh Whannell's movies, it's always kind of a focal point. He does a lot of very excitative cinematography, energetic, that's the word, where essentially it's lots of times it'll be locked on the portions of the actor and it moves kind of in tandem with him, almost like this dance. It's very fluid and interesting. Upgrade is an amazing showcase for this, but even in The Invisible Man, there are moments at which there's action or, a horrific scene where it'll kind of employ that again. And it's almost his little a calling card that you can see in his few movies, is more recent directorial efforts. And in this, he does it again, but it's like in smaller, more boring moments, and it feels more so like a wink to the audience, or like how he feels like he's forced to put this in here somewhere but doesn't know where to put it. And I just don't understand like why he decided to do that. Yeah, honestly, the only couple of things I can say super positive about this movie is I did think the sound design in some moments was pretty good. There's reasons in the movie why certain sounds are heightened or overpowered or, kind of confusing. And I thought more often than not, they were used for good effect. And I did think the cold open in a lot of ways was successful. I think it misses a very clear moment where you can easily transition from that cold open to like the protagonist of the movie. And then it just doesn't, and it overstays its welcome for probably another 2 or 3 minutes, which is confusing. Once again, it's just like, right off the bat, there's this feeling of things being mishandled. There's reasons why in that cold open, I think it's mishandled as well, but we'll save it for the spoiler-filled discussion. And I guess what I'll say is that Whannell still does know how to execute a jump scare. Is what he's showing scary oftentimes in this movie? No, not really at all. But he also subverts the classic beats of a scene to do a jump scare. And like there was one in the cold open that kind of got me by surprise because it was like, geographically based on where the character was. I didn't expect anyone to be at all near them. So I was surprised by that. And then there was also a very quick one, probably 10 or 15 minutes into the movie, where it was almost in the middle of like a discussion about like, family and how much they care about each other and whatnot. It was very sudden. And I thought that worked very well, also. But it's just, I don't know, man. Like, I don't know what to praise in here. It just very much seems not at all like what he did with Upgrade or more recently The Invisible Man. And yeah, put me in like the camp of the haters, I guess. I did not like the Wolfman design at all either. So, it's not even a mixed bag. It's just honestly, it's pretty dull. And I don't know 100% what he was going for with this one.
I'm 100% on that wavelength that, like you said, there's so much that seems like mishandled and just stuff they really missed. But it's like at the end of the day, I don't get like what the point was, what the goal was with it. And, as we said, that it's just interesting because you know what, like, as much as we make fun, every other episode about stuff like Night Swim and whatever, like that stuff's supposed to be bad.
Well, it knows what it is,
yeah.
Right? It has a clear identity. This is almost like he wanted to do a slower paced, generational trauma sort of movie. And then maybe the studio was like, hey, Leigh, we've seen that 100 times. Let's not do that. And then it was kind of like, well, but a lot of it's filmed already. Let's just re-edit it and, go back for reshoots, add some more action. And then you just wind up with this confused movie where nobody really wants to like slow down and talk to one another to actually develop these characters. But also it's not so action-packed where it's like the horror or the action of the Wolfman on screen is like so interesting or captivating that it can kind of, coast on that alone. It just winds up being like the people that want to see that generational trauma sort of movie aren't going to like the action part of this Wolfman movie. And then the people that are there for the action part of the Wolfman movie are going to be bored for the other hour of this movie. So it's just like, who's this for? I have no idea.
Do you feel like Leigh gave a cut of this and then Jason Blum was like, man, you know what? Like, this is starting to look good. They're like, have you seen, I'm just going to give you a copy here to watch. Have you seen this movie Sony put out called Morbius? It's pretty good. One of my favorites of a generation. And we're wondering if you could pull some Morbius vibes in here.
I never got incredible Morbius vibes in here other than, I think, some of the facial structure of Wolfman, like kind of like, over accentuating like cheekbones or the ears or, brow or stuff like that. But to tell you the truth, a lot of the action stuff too, I pretty much just glazed over for. I was, once again, it's shocking to admit, but for a lot of this movie, I was literally just in my head, like writing the movie that it could have been in my head, because obviously like this idea about like generational trauma and horror has like been done to death, the last couple of years. But there is still like, interesting takes you can do on it. And just like, personally, like I am still writing off and on at times. And like, this is an idea in horror that I very much enjoy. Not Wolfman, but just generational trauma, monsters exhibiting themselves as trauma. How do you defeat that? What, how do you get over it? How does it impact those around you? I'm interested in these aspects. So when the beginning of the movie seems to be going down that road, I'm kind of keeping an eye out for it. And, I'm waiting for it with bated breath. And then it just never comes because once again they kind of lure you in with that, and then there's absolutely nothing in the movie. So no, I didn't get Morbius from this, but I mean I didn't also get anything at all what I wanted. And any time when there was maybe Morbius like action on a screen, I was just as checked out as I was during Morbius. So Rowan, you recommending people go spend some time in the theater, check this one out?
I mean, this one, I think I'm going to say no. I think I'm going to say wait till it, you can get it on stream or something. This is going to be a number one on Netflix. I already know it. I'm going to be like, what's going on with society right now? It's like The Wolfman, number one on Netflix for a record 8 months or something until Carry On 2 comes out. Yeah, I would say skip this. I obviously, we said, we got some VIP club memberships going on here, so my IMAX experience isn't as expensive as most. But I don't know, I didn't need to see this on IMAX. Really,
Oh no, it's definitely not worth that.
Yeah, this could have played on a normal screen, and I would have had the same effect, the same ideas of it. And I just think I can't see this being a lot of people's vibes. I mean, if you're like a true blue horror person, I don't know how much is in this for you. And even someone that loves, the Wolfman and all the iterations of it from Hammer to Universal, I don't think there's anything here for you either. So yeah, I'm going to not recommend it. How about yourself, Colton?
What I'll say is if you have the means to do so, maybe head to the theater and check this out, because it's the first big horror release of the year. Outside of that, if this was March and, half a dozen things already came out, I would say no. But for now, I'm going to say sure. Go check it out. I think we should still support Leigh Whannell. Hopefully he'll, make something a little bit better next. If he churns out a few Wolfmen in a row, maybe, all that goodwill dries up. But yeah, I don't know. A very cautious recommendation. If you're interested in seeing this, if you're the sort of person that is just going to listen to the whole spoiler-filled discussion regardless, it's like, yeah, probably just wait for it, to come on streaming. You're not really missing out on a great piece of cinema either way. Sadly, it's a bit of a step down for sure from The Invisible Man.
I can't wait for the sequel, The Wolfmen's.
Wolfmen's. This is with an S. So yeah, that's, not a recommendation from Rowan. He's telling you to wait until it's on streaming. And I'd say a cautious recommendation from myself. Maybe check it out in theaters if you got nothing else better to do. But with that, I think it's time to cut to the spoiler discussion for Wolfman. We are now in our spoiler discussion for Wolfman. So if you've not seen Wolfman, it's time to tune out and come back once you've seen the movie, or keep listening if you simply don't care. Rowan, I'm going to change things up again. I want to start this off just because I need to talk about monsters.
Oh, I was wondering if you were changing out where you were going to say I didn't need to listen because I don't really care. So I just stopped listening. But continue.
Fair enough. Fair. In monster movies, one of the most, if not the single most important aspect for building tension and suspense early on is ensuring that you don't show the monster too early. And once you do show the monster, it better be damn scary, as from that moment on, the jig is up and the audience has a clear image of what our characters are facing, and the audience's imagination can no longer help you out in conjuring, an even more monstrous creation. In Wolfman, I hate how it's apparent right from the cold open that there is a very obvious, very literal Wolfman in the woods. And if catching a glimpse of him in a scope of a rifle 2 or 3 times wasn't enough, we then get a full body, split-second shot in the form of a jump scare some 10 minutes later, as the family crashes off the road and whatnot and gets stuck in that Jurassic Park car stuck in a tree scenario. What possessed them to show the Wolfman so early in the movie? Why wouldn't you just have the very quick glimpse of the scope as young Blake is aiming around in the woods very quickly, as it's panning across, and you can see this form, almost like you have this image in your head, but you can't you never saw it long enough to actually put it together. You got a figure but you're not even 100% sure if it was a tree or if it was just a deer or a wolf or something like that. Why fully show us the wolf man so many times in the cold open and then like 10 to 15 minutes later? I just truly don't get it. There is literally no ambiguity. There's no reading of this movie that you can be like, oh, it's just all trauma, or oh, it's just all projections or whatnot. It's literally like, nope, 3 minutes in this movie, you know for sure there is a wolf man. And to be fair, we saw it in the marketing and whatnot as well, but it's a better movie if you don't know 100% that there's a wolf man that exists right off the bat.
Yeah, it's a weird, just a weird thing that we do, and I think it's interesting that, you know, I'm trying to think back to the trailers, but, you know, specifically the scene you're talking about when they crash the car, and then, you know, that's where we have Derek, he, like, falls.
I don't know if you're familiar with streamers, but he bears a striking resemblance to the WoW streamer Asmongold.
Oh, really?
And that dude has so many terrible takes and is just like downright despicable in a million different ways that seeing a guy that like bore resemblance to him also, God, just took me out as well. Anyways, go on.
But I thought, like, I was thinking about the trailer, and, you know, the trailer shows a lot of this scene. But the one thing they do, which I'm assuming might be a cut or a different shot, not in the movie, is, you know, like he gets like zipped out of eyesight, and you don't really see anything in the trailer. Like, it's just kind of like he's there, then he's tugged by something, and he disappears.
Oh, that happens in this.
Yeah, but in the movie, we see the Wolfman on him first, eating him.
Oh, yeah, he grabs him, he hops on top of him, and then rips him away. Yeah.
So this was where I was like so confused, because I was like, well, the trailer shot of this was way like more scary and jump scarish and doesn't show the Wolfman. Like,
yeah, but we've already been shown the Wolfman 3 times at this point. But this is what I mean. So like, sure, show him.
It's these kind of moments that they've just like ruined. It's no different than when this, you know, the family's running to get to the house, and they're doing stupid stuff like, oh, you can kind of see him in the background, the Wolfman running, but we don't want to show him too much. I'm thinking, well, you've already showed him. Like, we've already seen him. So what do we care? Like, you might as well just show him running now. Like, it doesn't matter. And, you know, this is also goes, you know, into the fact that, but, you know, another real important thing in the creature features is the creature, and the creature can't look like crap.
That was my next note.
Yeah, like, this is such a bizarre look. These guys looked like the lead from the Toxic Avenger when he fell into the toxic barrel and came out, more so than a Wolfman.
For so much of the movie where Christopher Abbott's skin was just kind of like peeling and it was like very bad blotchy, like a sunburn and whatnot, I was like, okay, I understand that in the opening of this movie we're describing it as Hill's fever. People believe that it was actually like this medical phenomenon up there that, you know, I was like, okay, so they want to make it seem like they're running hot, that their skin is kind of like sloughing off, you know, like I understand it conceptually. It's just like, once we go so literal, we're all here in a movie called Wolfman. Once we have been shown the Wolfman half a dozen times, once he's bit by or scratched by a Wolfman, once, you know, his teeth are falling out and, you know, he can't see very well, can't hear very well, can't eat. It's like, okay, we know he's turning into a Wolfman. Why does the next hour have to be painstakingly like turning into a Wolfman, but also not characterizing the people that are being impacted by him? It is so bizarre, because when I think over this movie, I can't even remember like what filled in the gaps. Other than like there is a sizable chunk of this movie where it's like turning into Wolfman, but I honestly couldn't tell you like what happened scene to scene, because I still know nothing of any amount of depth about, you know, I'll scroll up to see their names, Charlotte or Ginger, which of course, you know, is likely a, you know, an homage named Ginger Snaps, but it's like these characters, I have no idea like what they're doing, what they're going through. There was a weird edit at one point where I felt like Christopher Abbott's character Blake fell asleep and then slept for a whole day and woke up again at night just because it seemed like so much time has passed. But I think it wasn't supposed to be that. I think it's supposed to be a little nap. I don't know. Anyways, I'm rambling about, once again, like parts of the movie again, but the monster design, it's awful. Like, like I guess in a certain way I can appreciate that he doesn't look explicitly like a werewolf or explicitly like a man. He does look like a wolf man, but it still doesn't really look right. Like, there are certain angles where he does look lupine or wolf-like, and there's, very, very small moments where I think it's successful in terms of, like, the wolf nails pushing through the human fingernails. I thought that was a grotesque shot. It was well done. I never saw something explicitly as kind of like gory as that with the transformation, like just that one little note. And I know a lot of people have things about fingernails, so it'll be pretty successful. But other than that, I was just like, what would inspire them to go in this direction? And who in the right mind like thinks this is a terrifying, Wolfman, especially when you have both of them together, which is, the big reveal, I guess, but it's like his dad is a wolf man with the gray hair coming back to hunt him, and he's there as the new wolf man with the brown hair, and they're fighting back and forth, and of course this is supposed to be some sort of metaphor for childhood trauma, coming to rear its head, and it's just like, yeah, the movie's not written well enough to handle any of that, and all of this wolfman on wolfman fighting is garbage, hardcore trash. I hated every second of that shit when it was going on.
Well, especially those scenes, it just stops feeling like a horror movie and more just like kind of a dirtbag action movie. There's nothing scary about it at all. And like you said, there's no payoff to like, oh my God, it's his dad. Because I'm going to be honest, I don't know, maybe I'm a bad person or something, but like, if I'm making this movie that I'm basing my entire, deep themes on these, like generational trauma, and it's imprinting on his father. We kind of get a glimpse at the beginning that he might have like a little bit of an anger issue. He got a little Hulk in him or something, and he's trying to pull it back, and because
once again, there was a point in this movie where they had higher ambitions than two wolfmen fighting each other. Right.
But even our cold open scene, I'm like, the dad was pretty strict, but they never really showed anything that I'm like, oh, like this dad fucked him up. Because the dad also was like, he'd kind of like say, oh, you got to do this or you're not going to survive in the woods. But the dad also showed like tenderness to him and stuff. And I was like, if you want me to follow this generational trauma line, especially where they keep kind of implying like the relationship between this husband and wife, like there's obviously like something going on there. I thought there was some interesting camera play later on when he's the Wolfman and he's kind of got her pinned against the wall, and it's very accentuated that her eye is like bruised and they're kind of looking at each other, and I'm like, oh, okay, like maybe it's not just him recognizing her, but maybe before he becomes a wolf man, there is like some domestic violence here or something.
No.
You don't think? No.
No, I just don't think the movie is clever enough for any of that. There might have been versions of the script where it had some of this.
Well, and this is what I think. I think it's like remnants of what they wanted to do.
Yeah.
But they were like, well, yeah, like we're throwing it out the thing here. But like I said, because I just don't think this generational trauma theme is strong enough, like we said, it just, with the payoff comes of Papa Wolf and Baby Wolf fighting, I'm just like, okay, so what?
They don't even make you wait for it, though.
No.
That's the thing. It's like, this isn't the climax of the movie by no means. This just kind of comes in about midway through. It's kind of like when he's like, I don't know, 3/4 transformed maybe, or 2/3 transformed, and he has the big fight with his dad. But yeah, of course, if that was the sort of movie you were doing, this is where the payoff is. His father, as you said in the flashback, is very much like a military sort of guy. He's very regimented and whatnot, but he's not abusive. He's not an alcoholic. He's not like cursing and swearing at him all the time. The one time where he kind of gets really angry, it's like, yeah, your son wandered off in the woods that, there's a werewolf running around in, and also, there's people hunting here, It's like, there's probably a good reason to be a little bit irate at that moment. But for this to work, you would have had to have his father be an abusive father. You go forward in time. He's trying to suppress those urges. Maybe he is an alcoholic who's, on, in a stage of rehabilitation. Maybe it is the sort of thing where he's raised his voice at his wife too many times. And, she's, kind of say like, do that again, I'm going to leave, that sort of stuff. You could have played with that. And I thought that's what Leigh Whannell was going to do, because a lot of these sort of themes were explored to some degree in The Invisible Man. Like the thing the thing, or the reason why, in my opinion, why The Invisible Man is so successful is that for probably the first 45 minutes to an hour, maybe even longer than that, you don't know there's an invisible man. Yeah. It's literally like she was in a severely abusive relationship. She's living alone, but she still feels like this man who's very wealthy is somehow watching her. He's somehow around her. She can't escape that like former life that she had. She's meek, she's mild, she needs to always be looking over her shoulder. And then, of course, there's the horror of like, no, she had a reason to be looking over her shoulder. There was somebody there the entire time. And when that's revealed finally, you know, when we're getting closer to the third act, it is such a shock because he did such a good job, you know, establishing and developing this character that literally we're all seeing a movie called The Invisible Man, but we don't even know if there's an invisible man in it.
Yeah.
This is like, I don't know what happened. It's like 2 minutes in, he has to show you a wolf man running around. It's so bizarre because once again, there are little moments in the script where it seems like they're hinting at larger things. It just never happens. Charlotte, that's something I wanted to mention.
Yeah.
You know, I brought her up in the spoiler-free section that I'm not a big fan of her. This is Julia Garner's character. Right after he kills his dad, there's a moment where he stalks towards Charlotte, and he's like bloody and monstrous, and, you know, she stares him down, and he's like almost like face-to-face with her, and you can tell there isn't like a hint of fear on her face. So I thought in this moment, I was like, okay, similar to you, I was like, is there a history here? What makes this character so resilient? You know, I thought the movie was going to go down a different path of what happens in a movie called Wolfman if the wife of the Wolfman isn't scared of the Wolfman.
Yeah.
And we're in a horror movie. You know, like, does she have, you know, similar, like, is there hereditary familial trauma where she has to stand up, or is she confronted in similar situations, or metaphorical monsters in her own life? Like, it was the sort of thing where I was like, okay, this is like a kernel of an idea. This is like 20 seconds of the movie, but I was like, there has to be a reason for this, right? Why take this moment, take this time right after this stupid little fight to basically not show her being loving or tender, not showing her being like fearful, showing her being like powerful and strong and not at all scared.
Yeah.
The movie forgets it, and she's running away, and 5 minutes later, running around, screaming her head off. It was like, I think the movie stumbled into something interesting, and then it's incredibly tragic that they didn't explore.
Yeah, they didn't do it. Well, and like I said, all of this stuff also doesn't work because within the first, once we get past the cold open and we're into the city where they're living as a family or whatever, like Christopher Abbott and Julie Garner, like as I said before in the spoiler-free section, like zero chemistry. I didn't buy them as a couple whatsoever.
Honestly, I didn't like them together on screen, which is like funny because I like both of the actors, but it was just like that scene where essentially he goes to her place of work and they have like lunch together.
Yeah.
Oh my God, dude. It was so awkward. It was like these people have never had a conversation with each other in their lives, and somehow you got, I don't know, a 7-year-old kid together. I have no idea, like, how these people ever met up, hooked up, and had a kid. No idea.
Well, when they're having dinner at the table, I kept really trying to listen because I was like, no, I must be hearing this wrong. Because at first I was like, it was so awkward that I'm like, oh, wait, this must be like his sister, or like there must be a familia relationship here. And then I'm like, oh, no, they're talking like they're a couple. And yeah, I was like, these people seem like they've never met each other before. Even if, you know, they're on the outs here, I mean, because they kind of imply that, you know, Charlotte is, you know, she's, I think, more done with the relationship than he is at that point. Like, she kind of gives vibes that, like, I'm trying to kind of get out of this.
Yeah, that's what I got too. It was kind of like, he just lost his dad.
Yeah.
Sure, let's go up into the mountains, get away from our busy life, you know, pack up this estate, and let's see if anything is rekindled here, or is this the death knell in the relationship, is kind of the vibe I got.
But I think about, you know, lots of other movies. Off the top of my head, you know, I think about, I was really thinking about The Strangers, like the original The Strangers, where, you know, a premise of like a married couple that are like kind of on the outs, like car breaks down and then, you know, they're put in this horrific situation. But even though these two characters in The Stranger hate each other at the beginning, there's still that vibe that you're like, oh yeah, like, but you can tell, like, they love each other, they're into each other. Where, yeah, there's just, because there's no chemistry there, I'm like, I'm getting nothing on the screen. Like, I can't tell this, like, whatsoever. And like you said, I mean, I also really just think it's because you know, Julie Garner's character Charlotte is Like, it's not written well. Like, there's not much for her to do other than, you know, look at the monster, then run around and scream, do all this kind of stuff, make poor decisions, boosting a truck that definitely wouldn't start. But yeah,
it was also like, how are you going to drive it? All of the windows are completely like full of mildew. You'd have to spend a half hour cleaning all the windows to go anywhere. And yeah, it's just like, this movie is essentially at a certain point, it's basically her leading her daughter running from building to building, and we got a wide shot right at the beginning where it's like, okay, there's that old truck there, there's a shed, there's a greenhouse, and then there's the house. And all they do is they run between those like 4 locations over and over again, just to basically stall and pad out the runtime, because once again, they have no idea what they're doing. There isn't like a plan. They're not like figuring out how to escape or how to come together to overcome it. They're not explicitly waiting until dawn. There's nothing. There's no narrative thrust. There's nothing to this. There's no reason for it. It's so aimless. And then it's like, I get into like little decisions where it's like the greenhouse moment.
Terrible idea.
It's just like, who in their right mind would be like, you know, where's a good place to hide from like a clawed creature on like one piece of Teflon, little piece of plastic, you know, like a plastic sheet, you know, 10 feet up in the air, and you got the whole family up there, and somehow, you know, Blake is incredibly injured because he's, you know, halfway turned into a wolf man. They lug him up there, and I was just like, who conceptualized this? When they wrote greenhouse in the script, did they actually think of like glass panes of a greenhouse? And then for some reason they got there and they decided to do the plastic sheets. I have no idea. Obviously with that, you know, you want the claws tearing it through. You want to, you know, be ratcheting up the stakes of like, oh, are they going to fall through? But it's just like such a fundamentally stupid idea. And they probably could have just ran further and went to the house instead. Like, there isn't like, the way it's edited and shot, there isn't like this impetus to get up on the greenhouse. It's kind of like, once again, because there's like, how do they get Blake up there? It kind of just cuts from one spot to on top of the greenhouse because that's where they ran. And it's just like, well, you could have just cut back to the house or somewhere else. It's such a stupid little action sequence. And then it like kind of when he like looks at her and like basically like winks and jumps off the greenhouse to go chase after his dad, and they fight and shit and bite off his arm or bite off his finger or whatever happens. I was just like, what are we watching here?
Yeah.
It's so fundamentally stupid.
Well, I'll try to, you know, another thing I had kind of noted, and, you know, maybe I'll give this movie a little praise, a little bit of something I like, which sadly I'll just let you know ahead of time. I'm going to wrap it into making fun of the movie. But, you know, there was like little kernels that kind of gave me hope. So I really liked, as this fever's hitting him, I really like the shot where he's like on the floor and everything's like going to black. He's got like, and that real, like when that shot came, I was like, oh, wait a second. We're going to like do something here. This is going to get interesting. You know, we're in the spoiler section. Guess what? Nothing interesting happens.
Well, it's like you do that so basically his eyes wouldn't be adjusted to like the light around him or something, and then he accidentally hurts someone near him, right? Like he hurts his wife or hurts his daughter or something like that, like in his freak out and like in his face, you know, his haze. But he does nothing. He just sits there.
Yeah.
You know?
And, you know, I liked conceptually, like I liked him starting to like, you know, tune out like human voices and like English, what they're saying. So it's like jumbled. But then this is where, why I kept using my comparison. I was thinking about Morbius and, the sonar scenes in Morbius, when they use sonar, which we kind of just get the Wolfman version in this, where, like I said, the scenes where Charlotte is in the basement, I did like that. I liked where, you know, they very slowly turn the speech, you know, whatever effect they're using, and I did like that. I was like, oh, this is kind of cool, like, because he doesn't,
sort of like focusing his hearing, like, you know, drowning out other aspects of the world just because his hearing is so heightened now. It's just like, you know, a spider's legs against the wall for some reason is like a bass drum.
Exactly. So he can hear that, and like I said, like then he starts tuning out. He can't understand what they're saying, and he doesn't understand what's going on. I'm like, oh, this is actually kind of cool. But then, like I said, they take this thing I think is pretty cool, and then I'm getting like, I'm getting this weird, like, I felt like I was in a comic book movie. It's like the Wolfman's vision, where like there's lights coming out of their eyes, and like he's seeing auras and stuff, and like I was just like, this looks terrible. They use it way too often.
Yeah.
I was just like, it's just weird, and it took me out of anything every time they did it, because it becomes not scary. Like, I'm thinking about the barn scene where he's in the dark, they can't see them, they're trying to hide from him. I mean, we already have that. If he just kind of jumps out at them, he's not going to get them because he's going to get his leg caught in the bear trap or whatever. But we ruin any tension in that scene because then we go to this stupid Wolfman vision where everything is this, like sonar light. We can see everything, and there's, weird steam colors coming out of their eyes. And I was just like, this is so stupid. Although I will salute Leigh Whannell somehow working a Saw reference into this. So shout out to that one.
Oh, where was it?
Now come on. The minute that foot went in that bear trap, you were like, that foot's going just like Saw, bud.
Oh, gotcha.
It would now. Okay. I mean, it would have been. I think it would have been really awesome, at least if just on the floor in the barn was like an old saw or something. He doesn't have to use it, but maybe the Wolfman could give us as the audience a little wink, and at least that would wake me up. So
yeah, the wolf vision. I didn't hate it conceptually. Executed a lot of the time, I thought it looked pretty poor as well. Like, once again, I understand, like, wolves see, their eyes are different than ours. They have different rods and cones. They see different colors. I understand it. It was just, I didn't think it was executed well. And like you said, it kind of strained plausibility even in a movie that's called Wolfman. Going back to the radio scene, I like that as well. What did the radio have to do with anything in this movie?
Well, yeah, they just there for absolutely no reason.
I know. You had a Wolfman movie. You could have called in extra people, to come and help them out. You could have got whoever his father was talking to. It seemed like Doomsday Prepper guy. You could have got almost anybody to come in. Could have had some more casualties in this Wolfman movie. You could have had a reason for the radio to be in the movie. Once again, a lot of this, well, I don't have the script in front of me, but a lot of this movie of what we see reeks to me of like a first draft script, where you have all these ideas, and then it's like, okay, you wrote a 180-page script. Lots of good stuff in there, but you got to get this thing down to 100 pages. And then it's just like you start trimming, and before you know it, you had all this shit written in there, but it's just like, oh, okay, now it's just set up with no payoff. And that's what basically everything in this movie is. It's just baffling. You mentioned the bear trap. As soon as I saw that, I had that Frank Herbert quote from Dune, where it's like, an animal caught in a trap will gnaw off its own leg to escape, like the Bene Gesserit with like Paul. I was like, all right, that leg is going, especially earlier in the movie when you see him just gnawing on his own arm, which is a pretty gnarly scene. Yeah. But once again, Julia Garner faces it with like this resolve and almost like, this she's upset by it a little bit, but it's like, concern. Right? That I'm just like, what is this character? I want to know what this character is that is completely composed when her partner is eating his arm. Completely composed when he rips out his father's jugular, but then runs for the hills and goes and hides on top of like a plastic greenhouse. I want to know what this character is. I'm so confused. But anyways, the gnawing off the own leg. Very, very silly idea. Like, not good. And then they have him running on all fours like a wolf for, the next, a couple of minutes. And when I was watching it, it was just like, this effect is so poor. I don't know if it was Christopher Abbott doing it. I don't know if it was a digital double. I don't know what it was, but it's very obvious to me that there's some sort of green screen sock over that whole lower portion of the leg, because they're rare, don't get me wrong, but we've all seen a 3-legged dog move. right? And especially if a three-legged dog has to move fast, there is this kind of awkward way that they shift their body weight around in order to move and build momentum and go, kind of like hop along. This wolf is just moving like a wolf. This wolf man doesn't even seem like he lost his leg. It's kind of like I don't even understand why we even had that in the movie, other than we needed like a second or third reason of how he got caught in a place again. It was just like, just once again, there's no detail, no eye for detail, which is crazy because the Invisible Man is like, in my head, it's been a while since I've seen it, but it's like meticulous in terms of like how all this shit is planned out. And then this is just like, everything is just, I don't know, it just doesn't come together whatsoever.
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, I don't know, maybe Leigh Whannell, he used all the goods in the Invisible Man, and unfortunately, this is just a hit job, man. This is just a hit job.
Kind of like the second last scene of the movie. The deer blind coming back in from the cold open. What do you think of this? Did you like it at all? Or are you so checked out?
I mean, this is another reason that I was just like, I don't get what we're doing with the horror here, because, I get throughout history with Wolfman movies that, it's supposed to be this man and, is he giving in to the wolf side, but there's still humanity in him and all that stuff. But every single time that we're supposed to be like, okay, like the beast is here, the beast is ready to eat his family, kill his family, they pull it back. But there's no actual, like, like the Wolfman's a very tragic figure, like, throughout history. And it's just like, oh, I don't know. So he's about to attack them, and then all of a sudden he just stops and looks at them with, like, zero feeling. And, I've got this kid, I got Ginger touching his head, saying she can read his mind, and all this stuff.
Also, not paid off to the effect it should have been.
No, but it was just stupid because, I mean, he then attacks them. Like, I was just like, well, he would have just attacked them if he was going to attack them. He wouldn't have just stood there, stared at them, looked like he was going to cry or something, and then attack them just because. I mean, like I said, it didn't work. Obviously, you're bringing this back. This is supposed to be, this like transform. This is supposed to be where the generational trauma began in the first place with his dad. But like, it's just set up and played so terribly that, like you said, I don't know. You should be feeling something in this scene. This should be where all of that stuff pays off, and you should be getting horrified or emotional or all these things. And guess what? You don't get any of it. It's not paid off whatsoever.
Yeah, for me, it's the sort of thing where, once again, one of the more effective pieces of this movie, in my opinion, is the cold open. So coming back to the deer blind, I was okay with it, especially since they used a lot of the framing. Similar framing, similar like building of tension. It was just obviously Julia Garner and her daughter in this movie in the scene instead of, his father and him. So I liked a lot of that. But once again, it's just like screwing up the daughter's like mind reading ability at the end was kind of baffling for me as well. Like, she says something kind of like to the effect of like, Daddy says it's okay, you can kill him now, he wants it to be over or something.
Yeah.
And I was like, why don't you just say something simpler, like, I hear him, Daddy loves us, or something like that. Just something, or like he's always that, or like, I know what he's always thought, he loves us or whatever. Like, why does it have to be so explicit, like, of like, he wants it to be over, he gives you permission? All of the audience knows that deep down this Wolfman wants to die.
Yeah.
Right? For me, when I'm watching this, I think he kind of does like the final snarl as like he gives her reason to pull the trigger, essentially. He doesn't know if she's going to do it without him helping her get there. So he kind of snarls at her, opens the gate to come at her, and, she takes the shot. But there's even a moment right before that where it almost feels like the wolf is speaking to his daughter, which, once again, her ability is supposed to be mind reading. Why is he kind of like opening his mouth and almost like in this subhuman tone, which has been there earlier in the movie when he's kind of trying to talk to his wife and she can't hear him anymore? Why are you like having him verbalize that, like, kill me, essentially? It's just like, yeah, I don't know. I'm kind of exasperated at this point. I don't know. It's like, basically, I'm exhausted because every single point of this movie where it's like, oh, okay, I kind of like aspects of this, it's like, oh, well, what about all this? That's complete dog shit. And it's basically like that for the entire movie. Yeah. And then the final shot, probably the most obvious final shot that we all know is coming. Once again, harkening back to the cold open where it's like him and his father are going hunting, and his father pauses on a hill and he goes, well, you gotta admire that view, or something like that. And it's just like, of course, Julia Garner and her daughter, they're gonna be stumbling down this very same hill, and they're gonna have to stop dead in their tracks and just admire the view, admire the credits rolling up the screen. I don't know, dude.
Yeah, I mean,
are we ready?
I have nothing else.
So if you're new to the podcast, our review rubric is nay, okay, yay, or slay. So Rowan, what would you give Wolfman?
Yeah, so this one, I came in expecting to give it one thing. I'm going to give it the other. So I'm going to give it an A. I was going to give it an okay because, I said at the beginning, I was like, it's not Night Swim. Like, this isn't like, I don't think as egregious as like some Blumhouse stuff we've watched that we're like, oh my God. But I think it's almost more offensive that, they try to take such a serious tone that, I just really hope this isn't Leigh Whannell's entire fault for this. But it's just like, it's not good. It's not good. Anytime it can be good, they ruin it with something. It's, unlike the girl in my screening, like I didn't think anything really worked. I agree with you. I think maybe the first or second jump scare was all right. I was like, oh, okay. And it was really just, doing the basic jump scare. There's a sound. There's something quick.
A hand coming out from the wrong direction to grab the shoulder of the kid,
Yeah.
In the middle of a sentence where he's saying like, oh, I really love you guys, to his family, or I love you. It's just like, there's a wolf man in the middle of the road, crash zoom to it, like, yeah.
Exactly. And yeah, I don't think this is good. I think it's forgettable. I think that's kind of the issue.
Oh, absolutely.
And, unfortunately, or maybe fortunately, I don't know, Blumhouse knows what they're doing when they're releasing this stuff in January. Like, this is going to come and this is going to go. I'm sure it'll get some life on streaming. But, I can't see this. I don't think the Wolfman's going to go into the Blumhouse intro at any point soon. So, I'm going to go with an A. How about you, Colton?
Yeah, I have a note here saying that I'm still mulling it over. But, that was hours ago that I wrote that. Now the main word that comes to mind is disappointing. Like, for me, after about 15 minutes into this, I was left largely bored and yearning for a completely different movie. Even though this isn't technically incompetent in a lot of respects, or at least it's like better than probably your average Blumhouse fare, like stylistically in a lot of respects, like Leigh Whannell is still a decent filmmaker, even if I think this is his weakest in a while. There was just nothing to grab onto, and something about this just completely felt lesser to me than all of his other works. It felt a little stupid. It was kind of convenient. It didn't care to slow down and like kind of flesh out any of these characters. Maybe it was just too straightforward of an approach, but either way, like I just didn't really care where a lot of this was going. And I don't mean to like dogpile on this in my final thoughts, but I do think the writing really hurt this one big time. And, he wrote this with his wife. From what I've gathered, it's the first script she's written. Is it the sort of thing where it's kind of like you guys are working on this in tandem? Is it like you're trying to inspire her to finish a script and, get her name out there? How much of Leigh Whannell is in this script? How much time did he actually sit down and do the script? Or did it was kind of like, he let his wife kind of do a lot of it. And then, he came in and, it's just like, it's sad to say, but it's just weird that he wrote The Invisible Man by himself and it was excellent. And now he collaborates on his wife on a movie where the protagonists are a couple that their, marriage is essentially falling apart or their relationship's falling apart. And it seems like neither of them care about each other. And there's no drama. There's no emotion. There's no like goal or nothing of interest for any of these characters to do. So for now, I have to say maybe it was Corbett Tuck's Corbett Tuck's fault.
Might be that too.
Could be, yeah. But who knows? The jury's out. You know, he could come out and do another movie, or Corbett Tuck can go on the right like an excellent movie. It's just, for now, I think I have to lay it at, you know, the writing, not so much the dialogue, but just the whole plot and structure of the movie. I also obviously didn't like the Wolfman's design, all of the Wolfman v. Wolfman nonsense for probably 20 minutes to 30 minutes of this movie. I absolutely hated. So yeah, I gotta go ahead and give it a nay. There was a part of me similar to you where when I left the theater, I was like, it's pretty bad, but technically competent. And it's like, I can't just go give a movie okay because they know how to like put in good sound design, or because the camera isn't garbage all the time, or because it has actors I like. I was bored silly by this movie, and I was more so just disappointed in almost every creative aspect. So yeah, it's gonna be a nay from me.
I like you giving the dad rating. I'm not mad. I'm disappointed.
100%. That's me. For sure, with Wolfman. And if you're not following us already, you can do so at It Slays Podcast. We're on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, /, Letterboxd, Threads, Bluesky, TikTok. Does TikTok exist anymore? What was happening with TikTok?
Yeah, okay. It's still up there.
You can follow us at It Slays Podcast. And if you want to help support the show financially, like our horror hounds, Holly, Nicholas, Patrick, Mark, Stephen, Joy, Dan, Brian, Trevor, and James, gain access to the Patreon exclusive show Stream Screams and get episodes of the main show 48 hours early, be sure to head on over to patreon.com/itslayspodcast and choose whatever tier works best for you. Rowan, we never mentioned the score whatsoever in this movie.
I don't remember it, so
it's not important. But go ahead and plug the playlist.
So if you want to listen to the scores that are important, you can go to the It Slays Podcast horrific playlist on Spotify. If you have any problems finding it, you can go to any of the social media that Colton just mentioned. Go into the bio, click the Linktree link, and it'll take you directly there. We upload scores or licensed music from horror movies we review, horror movies we love, or just horror movies in general, iconic, it doesn't matter. We'll put it up there. So follow the playlist. We update it regularly, and get your spooky music on, because why the hell not?
And next time on the show, there's a couple of weird little things coming out, but I think probably the next major release that I think most of us will be checking out is Companion, starring Sophie Thatcher and Jack Quaid. That's hitting theaters at the end of the month, so we'll be back for sure to discuss that one. And with that, I think that about wraps things up for this episode. So until next time, I'm Colton.
I'm Rowan.
And as long as you keep listening, we'll keep slaying.